Namaskar, this is Akhilesh Bhargava. Welcome to Tit-Bits on Business and Finance with me. It has now been often very routinely accepted that the most defining and critical relationship in the 21st century will be that between United States of America and India. And it is not just that it will be the most important bilateral relationship between these two giant democracies, but that it will also be the most important relationship between two nations in the global order. You will recall that during the first 53 years of India's independence, India witnessed a visit by an American president only on 3 occasions. And now, in the past 20 years, this has been the 5th visit by an American president to India. India and America now see the importance of each other being engaged in a friendship in a global way. This recent trip of Mr. Donald Trump, the American president, to India, a 36-hour whirlwind trip, was a grand spectacle by any measure. Breaking protocol, Prime Minister Mr. Narendra Modi received him at the Ahmedabad airport, and then both of them attended a huge rally at the Motera Cricket Stadium at Ahmedabad. If you ask us, for Mr. Donald Trump, it was not just a rally meant for India, it was actually meant for his American audience. Indians are an influential vote bank in America, and now with 2020 witnessing a presidential election again, which Mr. Donald Trump is contesting, he certainly wants every vote that counts. And to us, this huge rally that he addressed was actually an election rally, and certainly the biggest for him, because it is only in India that we see these kind of numbers. There was cordiality and grandness all around. His visit to Taj witnessed the Taj dome being cleaned for the first time in 300 years. It was a grand visit, and so was a huge reception that he got at the Rashtrapati Bhavan. Friendship, cordiality, maturing of relationship was there all around, and thus we saw none of the rough edges, controversial tweets or boorish remarks that normally one sees during any international trip of the American president, Mr. Donald Trump. In fact, he said that he is not going to make any such single statement which will blow away the visit. This was something unusual if you ask us. Throughout, there was an understanding of each other's position. When it came to controversial issues like the CAA or Article 370 or the treatment of minorities in India, Mr. Donald Trump towed the Indian line and was very clear that these are internal matters of India. And he also said that Mr. Modi is capable enough of handling it. He said India is a brave nation and even terrorism would get handled by it. The adjectives that were thrown at each other throughout were fulsome in praise. Extraordinary, fantastic, great friend, and these kinds were repeatedly stated, and so were the hugs. At the drop of a hat, the two leaders were ever willing to give a hug to show the kind of optics that one shows in a relationship where both consider that they need each other. We also saw this when the Indian industrialists met the American president. Right from Mr. Mukesh Ambani to Mr. Ellen Mittal and Mr. Anand Mahindra were all there to actually say some good words of praise for Mr. Donald Trump, such that in response to their compliments, he was actually able to praise his rule, his regime, and all that he has done for the American economy. Mr. Mukesh Ambani said that his company has invested over $7 billion in America, and he actually thanked the president for the ease of doing business there, and further said that it is because of the tax cuts that have taken place in America that even India witnessed a cut in tax rates last year. He thus surprisingly credited Mr. Donald Trump for the tax rate cuts that we saw last year. Mr. Ellen Mittal thanked the American president for all the help that the country gave them for setting up a $1 billion steel plant in Alabama. And Mr. Anand Mahindra said that apart from the investments that his company group has made in America, they are hopeful of bagging a huge order worth $1 billion from the US Post for supplying vehicles. In response to this, Mr. Donald Trump, of course, said that it is because of his policies that the American economy is doing so good, And he even said that in case he does not come back to power in 2020, you can expect the stock markets in America to crash. While that may be an exaggeration, it is now time to see what did we get out of this visit, what did we not get, and what is going to be the shape of the relationship between America and India in future. What we got primarily, or what the two nations engaged in primarily, was related to defense. The two countries signed an agreement for purchase of defense hardware worth $3 billion, which is 24 Romeo Seahawk helicopters, the latest ones, and 6 Apache helicopters. They also agreed to increase their defense engagement, defense cooperation, such that the two armed forces can be interoperable in case of any emergency. That would mean India will buy more and more American defense hardware in the years to come. The president said that America will keep transferring and sharing the latest military technology and products with India, as both the countries actually seek to contain a common enemy, which is China. 3 agreements were signed in the trade domain, and those related to purchase of gas and oil, energy, medical devices, and mental health. What we did not get, or what was not discussed, was any relief on the H-1B in terms of the demands that India has been having, including providing social security for the H-1B visa holders. What also did not get signed was the expected agreement for Westinghouse America to supply 6 nuclear reactors to Andhra Pradesh. And what also did not get signed was the Comprehensive Trade Pact. But despite all this, what took place was the two countries declared that now their relationship is going to be a comprehensive global strategic partnership, wherein they will now go beyond bilateral relationships and they will also jointly engage in all kinds of global matters. So what are the key takeaways from this visit to India of Mr. Donald Trump? If you notice, there was friendship writ all over. Both the leaders were open and calling each other extremely close friends and expressing admiration for each other. What we are seeing is a maturing of a dosti. There was freewheeling conversation. There was no topic virtually which was taboo, and the body languages were extremely comfortable, as you see in friendships. Because of that, there was no lectures, no sermons, or no homilies coming from the American president for India, which often do happen. Thus, we are seeing a maturing of friendship. Ties will only deepen in future. You can expect more deeper ties, particularly in defense, as both the countries work together to control, to restrain a common enemy, which is China. Thus, unlike in the past when Mr. Modi was a little restrained when the American president spoke about the Quad partnership between India, Japan, Australia and USA, this time he did not show that kind of restraint. Thus, security, defense, terror countering and bilateral relationships are going to deepen further. They are going to matter for both the nations. What did not take place was a comprehensive trade pact, a free trade agreement. But according to us, it is premature to expect such an agreement. At the moment, India and US have enough trade skirmishes. We have taken each other to WTO on tariff issues. We have used difference of opinion on tariff matters. The US on its own scrapped the GSP regime under which India had concessional exports to the tune of $6 billion. That was taken away. There are differences on data localization. There are differences on taxing of products like steel and aluminum imports and exports of dairy and agri products by America to India. Thus, when it comes to a trade pact, there's a lot of homework to be done between the two countries. Thus, even though Mr. Trump said that you can expect a comprehensive trade agreement to be signed at the end of the year in case he comes back to power, we think that is not going to happen. What you would see is the trade ties broadening and deepening on a piecemeal basis. Thus, in the next 3 to 6 months, you can expect a preliminary trade pact covering issues where there is a sense of agreement. Down the line, as talks go on and some common ground is met, the trade pacts will only widen, and it is still far away before we see any kind of a free trade agreement between India and the US. Those who are optimists think that if India and US have a free trade agreement, the trade scope is to the tune of $500 billion. We think that's far away. Differences do persist. With this visit, we also now see that India has got some kind of an energy security as India imports more and more oil and gas from America. India thus has got alternates coming to importing oil and gas from the Middle East, from Saudi Arabia. And to us, that is certainly a good sign. And even US is certainly keen to export oil and gas to India. What we also now seeing is because of increasing defense imports and oil and gas imports by India from America, the trade surplus that India enjoys with America, which is primarily because of service exports, is going to go down. And for all you know, very soon USA might have a surplus with India. That will also help to take out irritants between the two countries. What is the larger picture emerging from here? According to us, the larger picture is a little different. It is certainly nice to see that heads of two countries are such friends as we see in the case of Mr. Narendra Modi and Mr. Donald Trump. But then what is very clearly coming across is that by siding so strongly with Mr. Trump and virtually indulging in American politics, Mr. Modi has certainly been burning bridges with the Democrats. That is what it looks. So if Mr. Trump loses in the 2020 elections and a Democrat comes to White House, that certainly means that there will be a huge slowdown in the pace of friendship being built up between US and India. Because for all you know, the Democrat candidate who might occupy White House is certainly not going to be on the best of terms with Mr. Modi because he sided with their arch enemy, Mr. Trump. What we are now seeing is that politics has gone global. The Indian Prime Minister goes to US in order to address rallies which are meant for its voters back home. And even Donald Trump has done that. With a testy and tough election on the cards this year, Donald Trump's visit was actually meant to comfort the Indian voters in America. And thus, if you see, he was extremely restrained. No controversial tweets from him, no boorish remarks, no abrasive remarks, and even saying he's not going to make any such single sentence which is going to disturb or blow away the entire visit. And all throughout, he was there towing the Indian line and giving praises to Mr. Modi. We think it was more a trip for comforting the Indian voters in America. And we think that this is certainly going to be the norm in future. An Indian politician will go to America to canvass for Indian votes back home, and so will be the case of an American president. This is Akhilesh Bhargava signing off till we meet again. Namaskar.
Now be the first to know about the latest updates on our new news app. Go on your Android or iOS, search for HW News Network. Download our app, choose the language you prefer to get updates in, and be up to date with the latest news.